Wow, this time around, the reports you sent are really something. We're diving deep into what some are calling an underwater monster,
Yeah.
Russia's new Yasen-M Class submarine.
Yeah, it's been making waves, that's for sure.
The thing that's really grabbing headlines is this claim that it can basically strike anywhere undetected. Kind of spooky stuff. So, looking at everything you shared, the big question for me is, does the launch of this submarine mean we're looking at a whole new level of naval security threats? Like, are we on the verge of a new arms race? But this time, it's happening underwater.
Right, and that's the key point to really dig into here. See, the Yasen-M, from what we're seeing in these reports, isn't just some minor upgrade. It's like they took a bunch of really advanced technologies and kind of mashed them all together.
So we're talking, like, next-level stuff.
Exactly. We're talking about a submarine that's nuclear-powered, designed to be super quiet. I mean, imagine trying to hear someone whisper in the middle of a hurricane. That's the level of stealth we're talking about. And on top of that, it's armed with a weapon that could totally change how naval warfare works.
You're talking about the Zircon hypersonic missile, right?
Right.
I mean, every report you sent, it's all about that Mach 9 speed. 9 times the speed of sound. I mean, that's just mind-bogglingly fast.
It is, and the reports all seem to agree our current defense systems just can't react quickly enough to something moving that fast.
So it's not just about speed, right? It's about the fact that, theoretically, this submarine could be out there somewhere, completely hidden, and then, bam, launch this weapon that nobody can stop. That's going to be a huge headache for anyone trying to plan a naval strategy, right?
Absolutely. The physics involved at those speeds, it's a whole different ballgame. When you have something traveling that fast, the time it takes for any defense system to even react, well, it's practically zero. And what's really interesting from an engineering perspective is how they manage to control and aim something moving so fast in the atmosphere. These reports hint at some pretty wild advancements in materials and propulsion systems that must be at play here.
Yeah, and that combination being almost impossible to detect and having a weapon that's almost impossible to stop, well, it creates a pretty serious challenge for any potential adversary. Makes you wonder how everyone else is going to respond to this. So with this new submarine, I mean, how does it actually stack up against what other major navies have right now?
Well, the big difference, as we've been discussing, is that operational hypersonic missile capability. The US and the UK, for example, they have really good nuclear submarines, super stealthy, advanced sensors, the whole 9 yards, but as far as we know, they don't have anything comparable to the Zircon. And another thing the reports emphasize is the Yasen-M's ability to stay underwater for a long time, potentially even months. If that's true, well, it makes it even harder to find and gives it a much larger range of operation.
So at least on paper, it looks like Russia has a pretty formidable new toy. But as with anything, I'm sure there are some downsides, right?
Yeah.
Our sources mentioned some potential limitations and challenges that Russia might face. What were some of the things that jumped out at you?
Yeah, for sure. There are always limitations. One thing that kept coming up was Russia's shipbuilding capacity. Building these kinds of super advanced nuclear submarines is really, really complex. It takes a ton of resources and specialized skills. So even if they wanted to, it's unlikely they could churn out a huge fleet of these Yasen-M submarines anytime soon.
So limited production, what else?
Well, these are incredibly sophisticated machines, which also means they're going to be expensive to maintain and repair. Plus, you need highly trained crews to operate them. That could put a real strain on the Russian Navy's budget over time. And then there's the question of how the US and NATO will respond. The sources indicate that they're already pouring resources into countermeasures, things like better anti-submarine warfare technology and ways to defend against hypersonic weapons. It's like a constant back and forth. You develop something, they try to counter it, you counter their counter, and so on.
It's like a high-stakes chess match, but with incredibly powerful weapons. So given that Russia has now shown its hand with this new submarine, what's been the global reaction? I mean, how are other major players interpreting this?
As you might expect, the US and NATO are definitely concerned. A lot of the articles you sent talked about a renewed focus on anti-submarine warfare. We're seeing more money going into things like deep-sea sonar networks, underwater drones for tracking submarines, and upgrades to existing submarine fleets. At the same time, they're pushing hard to develop better missile defense systems that might be able to handle hypersonic threats. It's a clear response to what they see as a new and potentially very dangerous capability.
And what about China? I know they've been really ramping up their Navy lately.
Oh, absolutely. China is watching this very closely. They're in the midst of a huge naval modernization program, and you can bet they're taking notes on what Russia's doing. The Yasen-M could even push China to accelerate their own development of hypersonic submarine technology. They want to make sure they can keep up and maintain a credible deterrent.
It's not just the big players, though, right? What about countries like India? They have a pretty substantial navy, and they're definitely a regional power.
You're right, it's not just the US, Russia, and China that are paying attention to this. For countries like India, or any nation that wants to be a major naval power, the Yasen-M creates a difficult situation. They might be tempted to try and get their hands on this Russian technology, or at least learn from it so they can build their own advanced submarines. This could lead to a lot more countries having these kinds of weapons, which would be a pretty worrying development. So yeah, the Yasen-M is definitely shaking things up in the world of naval power.
Definitely. And it brings us back to that central question. Are we headed towards a new underwater arms race? I mean, the thought of multiple countries racing to build hypersonic capable submarines is, well, it's pretty unsettling. And beyond just the technology itself, some of the reports you sent also talked about why Putin might be showing off this new weapon right now. What do you think he's trying to say to the rest of the world?
I think there are a few things going on here. First, it's a big signal to the West. Despite all the sanctions and the war in Ukraine, Russia is saying, hey, we're still here and we can still build cutting-edge weapons. It's a way of showing they're still a major player on the world stage.
So projecting strength, even with everything else going on.
Exactly. Then there's the domestic angle. Showing off a new superweapon can really boost morale and create a sense of national pride, which can be important politically, especially in times of conflict. And of course, there's the strategic deterrence aspect. By revealing the Yasen-M, Russia is basically saying, don't mess with us because we have capabilities you can't easily counter. It's about shaping how other countries see them and the risks they might face if they challenge Russia.
It's definitely a powerful message, and it makes you wonder what happens next. Our outline mentions a few key areas to consider. The big one seems to be the potential for a full-blown arms race.
Yeah, that's a real concern. As we've talked about, NATO and other countries are almost certainly going to respond by trying to develop their own hypersonic submarine capabilities or by investing heavily in anti-submarine warfare. But the problem is, when everyone starts building up their militaries, it can create a dangerous cycle. Each side sees the other as a threat, so they keep developing more and more powerful weapons, and things can spiral out of control pretty quickly.
And it's not just about the weapons themselves, right? It's also about where these submarines might be deployed.
Right. Think about places like the Arctic and the Pacific, huge, deep oceans, perfect for hiding submarines. If Russia starts deploying these Yasen-Ms in those areas, it could lead to more tensions, more military activity, and a higher risk of something going wrong, even accidentally.
And then there's the whole issue of potential new military alliances forming. Some of the reports even mention the possibility of Russia sharing this technology with China or Iran.
Yeah, that's a really scary thought. If Russia were to share this kind of advanced tech, especially those hypersonic missiles, it could totally change the balance of power in different parts of the world. Imagine if China or Iran had the ability to launch undetected strikes from submarines, it would be a game changer. This is why diplomacy is so important. We need to try to prevent this kind of technology from spreading and find ways to keep things stable.
So it's not just about one new submarine, is it? It's about a whole new way of thinking about naval power and what's happening under the surface of the oceans.
Exactly. The Yasen-M is a wake-up call. It shows that things can change quickly in the underwater world and that those changes can have a huge impact on global security.
It's a lot to take in. I mean, we've covered some pretty heavy stuff today. Groundbreaking technology, potential threats, global reactions. Makes you wonder about the bigger picture. The last question in our outline is a big one. Is the world heading towards a new Cold War? And with all these advancements in military technology, what does the future hold? More diplomacy or more conflict?
That's the question we all have to grapple with. There's no doubt that the Yasen-M and all the other new weapons being developed are creating a lot of tension and mistrust between countries. Whether or not we end up in another Cold War really depends on whether nations are willing to work together to talk to each other and to find ways to reduce the risk of conflict. If we just keep building more and more weapons, well, the consequences could be disastrous.
It's a stark choice we're facing. On that note, I think it's appropriate to end with a different kind of reflection, an ancient call for peace that seems especially relevant today.
May all be happy.
May all be free from illness.
May all see what is auspicious.
May no one suffer.
Oh.
Peace.
Peace.